Thank you for staying with us. In commemoration of International Women's Day, Women of Substance International is hosting a conference tagged Women's Conversations here in Lagos. The event, themed Accelerate Action on the Rights, Equality and Empowerment for Women and Girls, aims to foster discussions on the 12 critical areas of concern and action plan from the Beijing conference. 5 distinguished speakers will delve into pressing topics such as women and health, women and poverty, women in the media, violence against women, and women in power and decision-making. The conference will bring together women from diverse sectors, NGOs, and CSOs. Joining us in the studio is the convener of Women of Substance International, Onyegbule. Ife, good morning. It's good to have you here.
Good morning. Good to see you.
You're looking as colorful as ever.
Good to see you. Thank you for having me.
Great, great. Now, let's begin with 30 years on from the Beijing conference. Have we been able to address gender disparity, have that solidarity as women to also address the issues that were outlined at that conference so far?
Okay, so I would say that we're getting somewhere. We're not there yet. Because when you look at it, the essence of that conference was to see how to bridge the gap, but that's not happened. It hasn't happened, at least in this part of the world. In some other areas, you find that women are all over the place. And when I say all over the place, you look at in politics, some people have been able to attain the 50-50, 50%. But here, we're not there yet, and you see all sorts of discriminations as it is. So those are some of the issues we want to take a look at with what it is that we have put together.
I'm wondering why you think that we've not been able to get there yet. We've seen women groups like yours have conversations, table so many things. Over the years, we've been tabling things. And I'm wondering why this conversation is not getting us close to that.
So it's not getting us close to our destination because of the issue of patriarchy. You understand what it is. Patriarchy is a major issue in this part of the world where people think that you cannot do something because you're a woman. But then I'll say to you that we have moved from where we used to be. We're actually inching towards there, but we're not there yet. And I'm hoping that we will get there. Because if you look at some of the conversations that they discussed at that conference, it was, they looked at issues that had to do with women in poverty, women and health, women in governance, women at the grassroots, a whole lot of issues. But some key things, stuck out. And that's what it is that a lot of women groups are looking at, to see how we can get to where it is that we want to be from where exactly that we are. And I'll say to you that we're trying. Women are doing great these days.
Absolutely.
See, the
look at you, for instance.
You can say that, but I would give it to my governor for him to step out to say, look, let's go fishing, look for someone who's able to do the job and bring the person home. As it is, I'm home. Being in Imo State and working there. And there are some other women too that he's called to say, come and work with me in the government. So you're right to say, look at me. There are other women too who are doing great things, but we still need more women, to step forward and take responsibility.
Will your event tackle this problem of women not asserting themselves a lot? Maybe because of the patriarchy you just talked about and because of our traditions and all that. In Singapore, for example, women have organizations that are moving things, in entrepreneurial strides, in the medical field and all that. But we don't seem to have a lot of that in Nigeria. Are you going to address this and maybe prefer solutions and encourage the women to go ahead?
Well, no one event or no one woman group can actually achieve all of that. It's a collective responsibility. And as I say to you, we're there. You just talked about Singapore now. You just talked about that. When you look at the history of what it is, when you talk about that country, you know what we're talking about. But right here, you have groups. There are so many things militating against what it is that you're doing. But yes, the conference that we're having, we have 5 key speakers who will be talking about different issues. Let me take, for instance, the issue that has to do with the reportage of women. I'm sure right on this table, you'll all agree with me that when issues that have to do with women come to the fore, there is some kind of tinge that the media gives to it, because people understand that negative stories sell. Negative stories, you know, those are the ones that quote unquote blow. Those are the ones that actually trend, and people exactly, and people latch onto it. But no one is looking at the other side of the story. So we're saying, look, the person who's going to delivering that lecture, let me say, is your CEO. She's going to be talking about what it is and how we can give fair representation to women issues, and of course report them in positive light. I think that's what the media needs to do. But when it comes to reporting issues about the men, people want to see the good things, the great things that they've done. But as long as it's about women, you you see people focusing on the negative aspects. Something happens, they say, oh, the woman did this, she did that. No one has asked the question of why this is the way it is. So I'm saying that the conference will address a lot of these issues. We're looking at women in the grassroots. There's a veteran journalist who's actually a queen now in a kingdom where she was married into. She's dealing with women at the grassroots. We'll look at those issues affecting women in the grassroots, and why it is that it's difficult for some of them to move exactly from where they are. There are women who's going to be talking about widows, what it is that widows are facing today. The issue of patriarchy also. You find that a woman whose husband dies, they will always say it's the woman who killed the husband. No one understands that something could have happened why that man had to expire. Right. But really everyone focuses on the woman.
So if you want to talk about women and leadership positions, for instance, we are governed by women, and in TVC, for instance, if you talk, you mentioned the CEO, you mentioned the HR as a PCU, you mentioned the news director, you mentioned Veronica can help me. Even
but I'm sure you all feel it. I'm sure you all feel it now. Now women are in charge.
Yes, absolutely, absolutely.
So this is a gender
but this is where I'm going. It is not peculiar to Africa or Nigeria.
Absolutely.
Because if you look at world over, according to this data, it said as of 2021, only 21 countries have 7 women as heads of state or government, and 119 countries have never had a woman leader. US, for instance, has never gotten a woman president. We saw what happened in the last election.
Sure.
So women supporting women is something, we want women to be there. But then women supporting women at a grassroots level when it comes to politics is another ball game entirely. How do you think we can address this, this issue? So, are you not iffy about it? Okay,
very iffy. There's so much iffy about it. There are so many things iffy about it, but when you look at it, I feel somehow when it's the man that has to raise the fact that you don't have women supporting women. There are women who support women. I support quite a lot of women. Absolutely. I have women who support me also. Right. But you would not cherry pick and say, oh, because this woman has said no one is supporting her, you now generalize. I do not think so. Yes, there are some bad eggs, some women who try to, pull other women down. When we talk about, you know what it's called, when you say people are crabbing in a bucket or a basket, they are crabbing and clawing others down. You don't want the other women to come up. But that's not to say it is something that will stop you from reaching your goal, from attaining your goal. I've had such women who didn't want me to inch forward. But let me tell you, when you succeed at what it is that you're doing, these are the same women that will file behind you and say, yes, I know that person. So I never want to dwell on the negative. I want to focus on the positive and see how we can get to raise another generation of women who will also hold the hands of other women and help them climb.
Very, very important, very important. I like the fact that we're looking at the intersectionality of these issues as well. And there's a cross-section of persons that I'd like for us to also address the matters of their equality, which are persons with disabilities. They seem to be not part of certain conversation when it comes to gender equality and their rights and all of it. And I'm wondering if this is also forming part of the conversation that will be had on that day.
All of these things will be talked about. There's a young lady who's coming all the way from Abuja, and that's another lady who every day she says it, oh, it's Sister Ify that gave me, she gave me the link to all of the things that I do today. Because I said to her, you can tell your story. You're the only one who can tell your story. You don't let anyone tell it for you, because they will embellish the story and tell it. And she started, starting from radio, went on to television. She's telling her story. And her story is peculiar to what other women face. So yes, this conference will address all of that, because I think every and any woman should be at the table. I used to have a boss that says to me, no matter how small an organization is, it must be big enough to accommodate Deadwood. And that's something we need to ponder. You know, no matter how tiny the table is, no matter what kind of conversation that you're having, you must be able to make room for every woman to be represented at that table. We may not all sit at the table,
that's right,
but their interests need to be discussed, and we're going to look at that. We're expecting the people from the domestic violence response team in Lagos. We expect that they'll be there. We're also looking at women who have worked with some of these women in their NGOs. They'll be there, and they'll